The President.
Good morning, members. The Council meeting begins. Questions. Question 1, Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, President. There are views that the kindergarten sector is facing a period of operational difficulties amid the decline in the source of students and increasing costs. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that the government is studying the integration of various school subsidies to enhance efficiency, whether it will concurrently explore granting kindergartens greater flexibility in resource allocation, allowing them to flexibly use the subsidies across different subsidized areas to help them more effectively cope with rising operating expenses. 2. As some members of the sector have pointed out that the current employment requirements for the relief grant for appointment of kindergarten supply teachers lack flexibility, making it increasingly difficult for kindergartens to employ supply teachers, whether the government will, when integrating various kindergarten subsidies, also study the refinement of the employment requirements for supply teachers, taking the actual needs of kindergartens as a basis for consideration so as to facilitate the employment of suitable personnel to fill short-term vacancies. And 3, in the face of structural changes in student population, apart from encouraging school-sponsoring bodies to achieve synergy through mergers, whether the government would consider studying and introducing other support measures to assist kindergartens with excellent education quality but temporarily affected by fluctuations in the source of students, thereby maintaining the stability of the early childhood education system. Secretary for Education. President, the government attaches great importance to early childhood education and implemented the kindergarten education scheme in the 2017-18 school year to provide good quality and highly affordable kindergarten education to school-aged children, turning a new age of kindergarten education. The government has put in substantial resources and implemented measures such as student unit subsidy, teacher professionalism monitoring and quality assurance, school premises facilities, curriculum and students' learning, as well as parent education. The government provides kindergartens joining the scheme, called Scheme KGs, with direct half-day unit subsidy according to the number of eligible students. Kindergartens offering whole-day and long whole-day services will receive an additional subsidy of 30% and 60% respectively. Unit subsidy is used for teaching staff salary, supporting staff salary, and other operating costs. In addition, grants related to premises, support to non-Chinese speaking students, etc. are provided according to the context. The rate of enrollment in Hong Kong is close to 100%, which reflects the kindergarten education Hong Kong is universally accessible under its education system, and also highlights its specific features and strengths of flexibility and diversity. Kindergartens receiving recurrent funding operate flexibly and respond promptly to social changes and parents' needs. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank colleagues in the kindergarten sector for consistently working in concerted efforts with the Education Bureau and their commitment in providing quality education. The Bureau has been continuously reviewing and enhancing the scheme to support the kindergarten's ongoing development from different perspectives. We provided Scheme KGs with additional subsidies, such as the support grant, the grant for procurement of ventilation assessment service, and the grant for procurement of air purifiers multiple times during the pandemic. Meanwhile, to enhance teacher professionalism, structured learning programs lasting for several weeks have been provided for experienced teachers, senior teachers, and aspiring teachers, and subsidies for supply teachers. Moreover, a one-off professional capacity enhancement grant was provided in 2022 and 2024 to facilitate teachers' professional development. In addition, we provided the one-off grant for promotion of Chinese arts and culture to strengthen national education, and a one-off grant for promotion of national education through homeschool cooperation to encourage kindergartens in organizing more diversified school-based activities through homeschool cooperation to help students understand and appreciate the Chinese culture from an early age. The Bureau has been maintaining communication with the sector and pragmatically keeping refinements to the scheme with a view to supporting the continuous development of kindergartens. Our reply to the questions raised by Mr. Tang is as follows. 1. To enhance cost effectiveness of resources, kindergartens are allowed to flexibly deploy resources to meet school-based needs. For example, kindergartens can flexibly deploy the unit subsidy to cover their daily operating costs, teaching staff and non-teaching staff salary and related expenses. The portions of teaching staff salary, 60%, and other operating costs, 40%, have been combined when calculating the reserve ceiling for the accumulated surplus of unit subsidy. Besides, the Education Bureau has made a special arrangement allowing kindergartens to maintain the reserve of unit subsidy from an equivalent of 12 months to 18 months of the provision in the 2021-22 to 2025-26 financial years, with a view to minimizing interference of school-age population change on schools' planned development. Having consulted the sector and considered various factors, the Education Bureau decided to consolidate the one-off parent education grant, the grant for promotion of Chinese art and culture, and the enhanced grant for promotion of Chinese art and culture, and the grant for promotion of national education through homeschool cooperation into the consolidated one-off grant and extend its usage period in order to enhance flexibility, effectiveness, and synergy, whilst reducing the school's administrative work. We'll continue to communicate with the sector and optimize the scheme as appropriate in the future. In the aspect of appointing supply teachers, we require kindergartens to employ persons possessing qualification of certificate in early childhood education or above, and apply the salary range for basic rank teachers in determining the salaries of supply teachers. If a kindergarten cannot employ a person possessing the required qualifications because of special circumstances, the kindergartens concerned should provide adequate support to ensure the quality of service. Currently, the overall teacher-to-pupil ratio requirement for kindergartens has been enhanced from 1 to 15, including the principal, to 1 to 11. Kindergartens can flexibly deploy the extra manpower under the ratio according to the school-based needs. Meanwhile, kindergartens can make use of the unit subsidy to cover supply teacher expenses. In light of the kindergartens sector's needs, starting from 2018-19 school year, the supply teacher grant has been provided for scheme KGs to facilitate their arrangements for teachers to attend the specified training courses for 3 consecutive days or more offered by the Education Bureau on catering for students with developmental needs and supporting NCS students. The Bureau has also been providing a staff relief grant for staff taking paid maternity leave to facilitate the employment of supply teachers and substitute staff. 3. In face of the structural decline in school-age population, the Education Bureau has been encouraging school-sponsoring bodies and kindergartens to plan ahead of time by considering plans for consolidating and optimizing school resources. Besides, the Bureau has been liaising with the sector and providing support to alleviate the impact from declining school-age population, among others, including the provision of more KG premises owned by the government for allocation to eligible bodies on a competitive basis for alleviating grantor burden. The Education Bureau has implemented and regularized the relocation grant to encourage kindergartens in districts with aging population to relocate to new development areas, and those kindergartens that rented private premises to relocate to premises of a lower rent and government-owned premises, so as to improve the school environment as well as cater for the demand in new development areas, whilst reducing the surplus of school places in certain districts. The Bureau endeavors to provide more kindergarten premises owned by the government and also explores a single-site multiple-use model for provisioning or operating non-profit-making kindergartens. President, when planning for the future development of education, we accord top priority to the interests of students while reviewing the policies and effectiveness of use of public resources so as to redeploy and consolidate resources in a timely manner and focus on enhancing education quality to cater for the needs of students. We'll also maintain communication with the sector and work pragmatically. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, President. Now, I fully appreciate what the Secretary said in the light of the current fiscal position and to abide by fiscal discipline. It is technically quite difficult to provide full flexibility for the use of different subsidies and resources. Now, even if this is possible, it's really difficult to cater for the long-term needs of the education sector because of the structural decline in school-age population. My question is whether it is possible to start from the early childhood education stage and allow parents of children to new coming parents to take their children to Hong Kong and study kindergartens here. this will ultimately benefit primary and secondary schools as well. This can also solve the problem of aging population in Hong Kong. Now we have 9 years of free education for students here. It's quite difficult to allow non-local students to take up our primary and secondary places. This is also applied in different places and countries. However, outside of the 9 years of free education, we can explore allowing non-local pupils to take up kindergarten places. You've asked your question. Secretary, thank you, President. As I said, apart from universities, we also allow senior secondary schools to take non-local students, especially for direct subsidy schools. For kindergartens, basically there is no restriction. Students below the age of 18 can apply as long as they get a student visa. But of course, we also have a decline in student population. So for non-local students, including kindergarten pupils, they can apply for the student visa, and that applies to not only mainland students but also students from elsewhere, Macau and Taiwan. But we need to be very careful in considering the needs of parents as well. They must not leave their children in Hong Kong. We need to solve not only the problems facing the education sector but other social problems as well. Professor Lau Chi-Pang. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Tang for raising this question about kindergartens. Now, I've read the Secretary's reply, and I fully appreciate the difficulties of allocation of resources among kindergartens. Recently, the problem facing us has been the lack of students in primary schools. The Bureau has advised primary schools to undergo mergers. Now, is it possible to apply some vertical thinking here? And that means, since you have school vouchers for kindergartens, is it possible to arrange for a through training service so that kindergarten pupils can be promoted to, say, a particular primary school onto a secondary school, and that could help ease the anxiety among parents? This could help improve the quality of education as well. That's a suggestion for you, Secretary. Right, Secretary, thank you, Professor Lau, for raising this point. In light of declining school-age population, we need to be innovative and adopt the mindset of a reform to ease the situation. For example, the member talks about a vertical merger, not lateral merger. But we need to consider that the mode of subsidy for kindergartens is different from that for primary or secondary schools. We adopt a unit subsidy model for kindergartens. So we need to rationalize and address the differences first. In fact, in terms of school premises, for the new en bloc school, which will be commissioned, we will adopt a new approach. One floor of this primary school will be reserved and used as a kindergarten. So that's about flexible use of resources. As for other future arrangements, as I understand, there are some bridging activities that have emerged between kindergartens and certain primary schools. In the future, we'll review various arrangements. We'll look into options relating to the use of resources, the mode of subsidy, and the supporting facilities for kindergartens and primary schools. Mr. Andrew Fan. On the 13th of March, when I held a seminar for kindergarten school teachers, some participants referred to AI, and in fact, during the 2 sessions in the 15th Five-Year Plan, our country also places its emphasis on AI+. Now, my question for the Secretary is whether there will be dedicated subsidy for the development of STEAM and AI tools in schools to spark the interest of our children in kindergartens in technology. Secretary, I thank Mr. Fan for the question. AI, of course, is very important. It's developing rapidly. For our next generation, in the future, they will be using AI extensively in their learning and work and day-to-day living as well. Now, kindergarten pupils are too young at age. They may not be suitable for extensive exposure to AI in the learning process. However, we want to study whether more resources can be allocated to kindergartens so that these pupils will have extracurricular activities and experiential learning activities related to AI and how this is applied to a daily life. And we also have a Smart KG grant, which will certainly include AI. Next, Mr. Ng Kit. Secretary, as mentioned by Mr. Tang Fei and yourself, it's quite difficult to employ supply teachers in kindergartens. My question is whether it is possible for the government to set up a talent pool. This will be a centralized database for early childhood professionals, and that experienced school principals, teachers, or qualified supply teachers, as well as tutors of music, art, and physical education, can be included in the database. And when the need arises, we can make use of this database for employing supply teachers. Thank you, Mr. Ng, for the suggestion. This is something that we can look into. In the past, it might be more difficult, but now with the use of big data in this age of AI, we can study this option and see whether the government should set up this database or otherwise. Miss Grace Chan, for kindergartens taking SEN pupils, will the government provide additional resources so that SEN students get better support? Secretary. I'm sorry, did you refer to NCS students? Oh, special schools. For students with special needs, over the years, we have continued to refine the subsidy scheme for kindergartens. Apart from the preschool OPRS already launched with the support of various government departments, we also work on training teachers. As I explained just now, training is provided for teachers to cater for the needs of students with special needs and non-Chinese speaking students. This is actually the training goal for kindergarten teachers. Apart from this training goal, we also have subsidy for supply teachers to undergo training as well. This is also included in the formal training for early childhood professionals. On top of that, we also adopt a school-based approach. Now, for students with special needs or with diverse cultural background, we provide additional subsidy to these kindergartens. Now, for kindergartens, it may be too early to identify the students and classify them as SEN students. So the form of support might be different for SEN pupils than SEN students in primary schools. Ms. Christine Fong. Now, the Social Welfare Department operates childcare centers to take care of toddlers below the age of 3. In Cheung Kwan O, there is no subvented childcare center. They are all privately run. We have mothers with newborns who would like to rejoin the workforce as quickly as possible, and they're in need of proper childcare services. In light of the decline in school-age population, will the Secretary consider converting some of the kindergartens into childcare centers? or allowing a flexible use of these resources. Secretary, we have been working closely with the Social Welfare Department on childcare issues. I understand that there are some 200 childcare centers providing services in different districts. Now, this topic involves the use of school premises as well as student population changes in certain districts. When planning for new developments, we adopt certain standards. That is, we consider the needs of school-age children up to the age of 3, and we will also explore this matter with relevant government departments. Mr. Chris IP. As I understand, for secondary and primary schools in the future, according to this blueprint, promote digital education, $2 billion have been set aside to promote its development. For kindergartens, will there be additional resources to promote digital education? Secretary, as I said, the next generation will use AI extensively in their learning and work and day-to-day living. So in terms of the education sector, we want schools to go digital as well. We encourage secondary and primary students to equip themselves with the knowledge as well. As for kindergartens, we emphasize exposure and experience, and that is why we are studying the issue with professionals so as to give them exposure.
Question to Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, President. There are views that with the securities industry, especially small and medium securities dealers, facing the pressure of persistently increasing compliance and operating costs in recent years, the government should introduce targeted support policies to assist small and medium securities dealers in adapting to and meeting new requirements, as well as enhancing their competitiveness. In this connection, will the government inform this Council? 1. To assist the securities industry in smoothly implementing the uncertificated securities market regime to be launched within this year, whether the government will consider introducing funding schemes for securities dealers, especially small and medium securities dealers, so as to support the upgrading of the overall industry, if not of the means by which the government will assist securities dealers in catering for the relevant requirements of the regime. 2. It is learned that over the past years, security dealers have incurred additional operating costs due to their custody of large quantities of delisted company stocks. How the authorities will assist such securities dealers in handling the issue of custody of delisted company stocks. And 3, whether it will explore the setting up of a dedicated fund to provide funding support for the system upgrades undertaken by the securities industry to meet the renewal requirements, thereby mitigating their compliance costs, if not of the reasons for that. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, with Hong Kong being an international financial center, the government has all along been driving the SFC, Securities and Futures Commission, and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to leverage the unique advantages under one country, two systems to pursue reforms in different aspects of the securities market, introducing various enhancements to the listing regime and promoting high-quality development of the market. Driven by a series of reforms, Hong Kong's primary market welcomed 119 newly listed companies in 2025, with IPO funds raised exceeding 286.9 billion Hong Kong dollars, ranking first globally. In the first 2 months of this year, 24 companies were newly listed, more than double the number in the same period last year. The average daily turnover in 2025 was 249.8 billion Hong Kong dollars, representing a 90% increase over 2024. In the first 2 months of this year, the average daily turnover was 260.9 billion Hong Kong dollars, up 17% year on year. While the stock market is buoyant, we must not rest on our laurels. We must continue to seek breakthroughs to enhance the efficiency and competitiveness of Hong Kong's securities market. In consultation with the SFC and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, my reply to the 3 parts of the question is as follows. 1. The Uncertificated Securities Market Regime, or the USM regime, seeks to dispense with the need to use paper documents to evidence and transfer legal title to securities. By reducing reliance on paper and manual processes, it will facilitate straight-through processing and strengthen the efficiency and competitiveness of Hong Kong securities market. Under the USM regime, the existing nominee structure in the central clearing and settlement system will be retained. This will preserve investors' choice of holding securities through brokers, maintain the current role of brokers, and reduce the impact on their existing operating models. Following multiple rounds of extensive public consultation, the LegCo passed in 2021 the Securities and Futures and Companies Legislation Amendment Ordinance 2021, which sets out the principal legal framework for the regime. 6 pieces of subsidiary legislation providing for the detailed arrangements of the regime were also made in 2025 under the negative vetting procedure of the LegCo. In the 2026-27 budget, the Financial Secretary indicated that the government, together with the SFC and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, will work with the industry to implement the regime within the year. The SFC and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange have been maintaining close communication with the industry on the implementation of the USM regime. A number of measures are already in place to assist stakeholders, including brokers, in making a smooth transition. These include 1. The USM adopts a phased implementation strategy under which prescribed securities will gradually become participating securities by batches within 5 years from the commencement date. This will ensure market readiness, steady inclusion, and uninterrupted daily operations. 2. As the existing nominee structure will be retained, many current processes will remain unchanged, with manual and paper-based procedures progressively replaced by electronic processes. From the broker's perspective, the main changes will be the process in the deposit and withdrawal of securities. These will be achieved through the Hong Kong Stock Exchange's system enhancements, while the system changes required of brokers will be relatively limited, facilitating a smoother transition to the USM regime by the industry. 3. The SFC and the Stock Exchange have been working closely to provide brokers with sufficient information and technical support. The Stock Exchange published information papers in 2024 and 2025, setting out detailed technical guidance for market participants, including brokers, and organized 3 briefing sessions to familiarize brokers with the relevant processes and facilitate their preparations, together with 8 seminars and continuing training courses held by market stakeholders. The Stock Exchange will continue to provide updated information and organize briefing sessions, and will also arrange market rehearsals to enable market participants to familiarize themselves with the operation of the upgraded infrastructure and operational procedures. 4. To help the market better understand and adapt to the new regime, the SFC and the industry will jointly conduct investor education, including further enhancements to the dedicated website, providing one-stop information and a series of frequently asked questions. Publicity efforts on different fronts will be strengthened, including through videos and briefing sessions, to help investors understand the operation of the new mechanism and the steps for participation, thereby raising investor awareness and reducing brokers' workload. As certain existing fees will no longer be applicable under the USM regime, the Stock Exchange will adjust its fee structure to make it simpler, more direct, and predictable, and more aligned with the fee models of other major markets. This will ensure that markets' operating costs are commensurate with digitalized operations and support sustainable market development. After extensive consultation with the industry, the Stock Exchange has made multiple adjustments to the fees to minimize the financial burden on small brokers, including 1. Raising the threshold for the lowest membership fee rate tier to cover more small brokers. 2. Lowering the membership fee rate for relevant brokers. 3. Granting a 1-year waiver of membership fee for small brokers. And 4. Adjusting the stock custody fee rate. According to the Stock Exchange's assessment, about 88% of small brokers, that is Category C brokers of the highest concern of members, will pay lower relevant fees in the first year of USM implementation compared with before. From the second year onwards, about 65% of small brokers will continue to pay lower fees. Part 2. The government is aware that brokers may incur costs in relation to the custody of shares of delisted companies. The 2026-27 budget has indicated that the government will continue to explore with the market the provision of an over-the-counter trading platform for delisted stocks or those requiring special handling. The SFC and the Stock Exchange have previously conducted preliminary consultation with market participants and heard diverse views from the market. On one hand, some consider that an OTC trading platform would provide shareholders of delisted companies with an exit opportunity, and that retail investors should be allowed to participate with market makers introduced to address liquidity concerns. On the other hand, some believe that if the platform only allows shareholders of delisted companies to sell their shares, the volume would be insufficient to sustain an OTC market. In addition, the fundamental conditions of relevant companies may lack transparency and make comprehensive assessment difficult, so retail investors may bear higher risks while the attractiveness to institutional investors would be limited. Whether the platform can provide brokers with a channel to dispose of such shares, therefore, remains uncertain. The stock exchange will continue to consolidate views from different stakeholders and announce specific arrangements in due course, followed by further market consultation. 3. With the buoyant stock market, we're pleased to see an increase in brokers' revenue. According to the latest financial review of the securities industry published by the SFC, Hong Kong's securities industry maintained a steady growth in the first half of last year, with net profit rising by 14% to 28.9 billion Hong Kong dollars, compared with the preceding 6 months, driven by increasing trading volume. Notably, the aggregate net profit of exchange participants totaled 15.6 billion Hong Kong dollars, up 34% compared with the preceding 6 months, while Category C brokers' net profit doubled to 2.5 billion Hong Kong dollars. Trading volume continued to grow in the second half of last year and the first 2 months of this year, and we expect that brokers' revenues and profits may continue to rise. We'll continue to monitor brokers' operating conditions and maintain close communication with the industry. We understand that whenever new measures are introduced, the industry may have certain concerns, as was the case with the trading arrangements under severe weather implemented in 2024. Experience has shown that with comprehensive and candid communication, concerted efforts, and thorough preparation, we can successfully implement the USM regime together, thereby enhancing the overall efficiency and competitiveness of Hong Kong's securities market and benefiting the development of the securities industry. Thank you. Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, President. I thank the Secretary for the reply. The industry in general supports the USM regime. According to the Secretary, 65% will pay lower fees. However, the calculation method might be different between the government and that of the industry. According to the government, some will pay less. But on the other hand, it means that 35% of brokers will see higher costs. That is, over 100 financial institutions will pay more. How can the government ensure fairness? Does that mean some enterprises will shoulder higher costs? And how can you ensure that the costs will not be passed on to retail investors? Secretary, I thank the member for the questions. I want to thank Mr. Robert Lee for conveying the views of local securities dealers to the government. We have had a number of discussions. Every time we roll out a reform, we provide support to securities dealers, and we take their needs into consideration when we make the overall planning. Specifically, here we're talking about the USM regime. We decided to retain the nominee structure, and it took us 5 years to implement the regime. And for the first year, we're implementing a membership fee waiver. The reason is that when we were planning for the implementation, we already took into full consideration of the difficulties that would be faced by Category C brokers. The member just now asked about the implementation of the USM regime, that is, whether the small brokers will shoulder higher costs. As I said, about 65% of small brokers will pay lower fees. If you look at the reform measures that we have previously rolled out, all along, we have been liaising very closely with brokers, especially the small and medium-sized ones. So in terms of fee arrangement, we take into consideration their needs as well as the technical arrangements they have to put in place. So we have full justifications on our fee arrangement. The member said our calculation method may be different from that adopted by the industry. Well, that's why communication is important. That's why we will continue to communicate with the industry. We've already had a number of discussions with the industry, and we will carry on with the practice to show the advantages of this new regime. We will more thoroughly and in a more focused manner introduce this new regime to brokers. Mr. Lee Kuan-Yew. Thank you, President. Apart from the USM regime, I am concerned about the regulatory requirements for VA businesses. Many relevant practitioners are facing tougher requirements in relation to obtaining licenses. For example, they'll have to, through single institution, pass certain exam in order to meet the requirements. And before they take the exam, they'll have to receive training from certain institutions. Can the government tell us that over the past year for VA licensing exam, what has been the passing rate? Mr. Lee, you can only raise one supplementary question, and you have raised that question. Members, please clip your mic to your collar. Secretary, every time we roll out a new regulatory system, for example, the VA regulatory regime, we impose certain requirements targeting both individuals and organizations. And these individuals and organizations will have to meet a certain threshold, and that would include passing an exam. Well, today we're focusing on the USM regime, so I do not have the relevant information at hand. Perhaps I'll provide the information after the meeting. Mr. Chen Pui-leung. Thank you, President. I want to know if the administration has the statistics showing how many delisted stocks are currently in custody by small brokers, and what are the operating costs incurred. This will allow us to better understand the burden or pressure faced by brokers. Secretary. Now, concerning the USM regime, we try to preserve the original framework and structure. As we all know, currently, you can hold stocks in various capacities. You can hold stocks or shares in the capacity as a broker or in the capacity as a retail investor. In future, after the implementation of the USM regime, you have to register your shares with the registrars electronically. So for those who hold listed stocks in the capacity as an individual investor, will take a lot less time to complete the procedure. In the past, it took 10 days. Now, it will only take a day. And that's the major change that we will see after the implementation of the USM regime. In relation to the costs incurred, our arrangement is similar to that of many other jurisdictions in the world. To streamline the mechanism, we charge a fee based on the value of the equity shares. So we charge based on the lots. And that's the second major change under the new regime. The member also asked if we have relevant statistics or figures showing how many delisted stocks that are currently in custody under small brokers. Well, we currently do not have the relevant information at hand, but we Under the regime, we focused on companies incorporated in Bermuda, Cayman Islands, as well as in the mainland. And these companies account for 90% of the companies listed. So in the coming 5 years, most of these listed shares will see a paperless procedure. Next, Ms. Maggie Chen. Thank you, President. The listed stocks are in custody under small brokers for a prolonged period. Will there be a centralized mechanism to take over these delisted stocks to release the liability or operating resources of brokers? Secretary. I actually responded to this question in my major reply. The member asked about delisted stocks and whether there should be a platform that take over these delisted stocks. Apart from looking at how we should deal with the delisted stocks, we should also take into consideration regulation. As mentioned in my major reply, if there is a central platform that deals with these delisted stocks, we will ensure that there will still be a market for these non-performing assets. But on the other hand, the delisted companies may be facing various challenges. For example, the companies have already folded or have already applied for bankruptcy, or maybe they aren't able to meet certain requirements in relation to privatization. If we allow these delisted stocks to be traded openly on the market, we have to think about the perspectives of the delisted companies as well as the investors. If we only look at the companies or the organization's perspectives, it will affect the liquidity because we won't be able to ensure extensive participation. However, if we allow retail investors to trade these delisted stocks, there might be concerns as well, because these delisted companies may be facing certain problems at the first place. So we have to think what we can do to allow retail investors to continue to trade these delisted stocks. So these are all regulatory concerns. We understand where the member is coming from. We're not making a finalized decision yet. We are continuing to consult various stakeholders on the market, including investors as well as financial institutions, so that we can come up with a direction that we can all agree on. However, I would like to say that the regulatory concerns that I mentioned above have to be accounted for. Government officials, please try to respond to members' questions in a succinct manner.
Question 3, Mr. Holden CHOW. Thank you, President. Many members of the public are concerned that increased medical fees following the fees and charges reform will impose a long-term financial burden on those in need and consider the current application procedures for medical fee waivers conducted via medical social workers to be cumbersome. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1. As the government has earlier on indicated that it would continuously review the age and eligibility of elderly persons entitled to automatic public medical fee waivers, whether it has formulated a specific mechanism and timetable in this regard, including assessing the number of additional beneficiaries and public expenditure involved if the eligibility is extended to old age living allowance recipients aged 65 or above, if not the reasons for that. 2. Apart from extending the scope of fee waivers, whether the authorities will put in place other measures to further ease the financial burden on those in need of public healthcare services, if so, of the details. And 3. Given views that the number of persons currently exempted from public healthcare fees is limited, whether the government will consider extending eligibility to other qualified persons with financial difficulties, while stepping up publicity and explanation to society regarding the medical fee waiver application procedures, if so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Health. President, The fees and charges reform for public healthcare aims to, through reforming the subsidization structure, guide the public to make optimal use of healthcare resources and reduce wastage and abuse. At the same time, the reform adopts the principle of co-payment by those who can afford and co-payment by those with mild conditions, and enhances healthcare protection for the 4 categories of poor, acute, serious, critical patients on all fronts, thereby enhancing the sustainability of the healthcare system to meet the challenges posed by an aging population, increasing prevalence of chronic diseases, and so on, and strengthening its role as a safety net for all. The various measures under the reform have been successfully implemented since the 1st of January 2026. After the implementation of the reform, the government maintains a very high level of subsidization of up to 95% for public healthcare services, with citizens co-paying a very low proportion of the cost. As an essential component of the fees and charges reform for public healthcare, the Hospital Authority has expanded its medical fee waiver mechanism. The number of eligible low-income individuals who could potentially benefit is estimated to increase to about 2 million, meaning more than 1 out of 4 citizens are entitled to fee waivers. This ensures that no patient is denied medical care due to a lack of means. Since the implementation of the reform, the number of medical fee waiver applications approved by the HA has multiplied compared with the past, demonstrating that the significant effectiveness of the reform in strengthening medical protection for patients. Financial assessment is a key component in medical fee waiver applications. Those who have financial difficulty and are eligible for medical fee waivers are in general from low-income families with relatively simple income and asset structures. For most cases, the application process could be completed with fee waiver approved within the same day. This shows that the assessment process is not complicated. Moreover, from the 1st of January 2026 to the 13th of March 2026, medical fee waivers have already been approved for nearly 200,000 people, far exceeding the annual approved number of around 14,000 in the past. Among the approved cases, over 130,000 are elderly persons aged between 65 and 74. The fact that a large number of waivers have already been successfully approved for patients within 2 months or so shows that the application procedures for medical fee waiver is not complicated for patients including the elderly. The application procedures are even simpler for Old Age Living Allowance (OALA) recipients aged 65 and 74, as the HA will make reference to the financial assessment already completed for their OALA applications and exempt them from submitting part of the required documents, and thus significantly facilitating their application for medical fee waivers when they have healthcare needs. OALA and the medical fee waiver mechanism are fundamentally different in nature. The former is a cash welfare for elderly persons, the aim of which is to supplement the daily living expenses of the elderly. An assessment is in place to determine the eligibility for the allowance. The latter, however, is a medical safety net, which aims to support patients who, despite heavy subsidization from the government, are still unable to afford public healthcare charges due to financial difficulties. The aim of the assessment is to determine the ability of individuals concerned to meet healthcare expenditure. The medical fee waiver mechanism covers all age groups, specifically targeting protection of the 4 categories of poor, acute, serious, critical patients. Even for targeting the poor patients, the assessment criteria, that is, the income and asset limits, are different from those under OALA, and therefore application and assessment for the 2 schemes must remain separate. Following the principle of progressive and orderly implementation, the government will review the arrangements under the fees and charges reform for public healthcare every 2 years. But when considering whether to expand the scope of beneficiaries of automatic medical fee waivers, the government must carefully assess the impact of such measures on the long-term sustainability of the healthcare system amid the challenges posed by an aging population, as well as the allocation of healthcare resources. At present, Hong Kong has over 1.8 million people aged 65 or above, accounting for 24% of the total population. Around 45%, or 820,983 persons, are receiving OALA. With the further aging of Hong Kong's population, the number of people aged 65 or above is projected to increase to about 2.74 million in the next 20 years, representing 36% of the total population. By that time, the number of OALA recipients will also have surged correspondingly. If the government adopts a one-size-fits-all approach to automatically grant full medical fee waivers to all OALA recipients aged 65 to 74, regardless of their income or asset levels. The number of individuals eligible for automatic fee waivers will immediately increase by nearly 450,000. Such an expansion will further intensify the pressure that an aging population has already been placing on the sustainability of the public healthcare system, running counter to the government's intention to address the challenges brought about by an aging population through the fees and charges reform for public healthcare. Since the announcement of the reform in March last year, in addition to briefing the panel on health services in April last year, the Health Bureau and the HA have proactively met with various political groups, professional bodies, healthcare personnel, patient organizations, and relevant advisory structures to provide detailed explanations and exchanging views on the reform measures, as well as holding district council briefing sessions in April and December last year. Dedicated web pages, information kits, videos, and publicity materials have also been produced to help the public understand the relevant arrangements. Various clusters of the HA have organized numerous briefings and workshops for different stakeholders, including DC members, patient groups, and volunteers, to disseminate the relevant information to the society. The HA will also continue to work with local stakeholders to organize workshops and seminars to enhance public understanding of the various reform measures, including medical fee waiver mechanism. On top of expanding the medical fee waiver mechanism to cover a total of around 2 million poor patients across Hong Kong, the fees and charges reform for public healthcare has also introduced a second safety net for acute, serious, and critical patients, including one, waiving the charges for accident and emergency services for categories 1 and 2 critical and emergency patients, 2, introducing an annual cap of $10,000 on public healthcare service charges, which is not subject to means test, and all Hong Kong residents can potentially benefit, protecting all patients suffering from unexpected serious illnesses or chronic conditions. As at the 13th of March this year, the annual cap has already been approved for 1,674 patients who will no longer be required to pay any further within this year. And 3, the HA has strengthened the protection of critically ill patients in terms of drugs and medical devices by relaxing the eligibility criteria of the Samaritan Fund and accelerating the introduction of more effective innovative drugs and devices. These measures enable more patients from middle-income families to receive more subsidies for self-financed drugs devices. Among the over 2,000 cases approved under the funds as at end February 2026, around 30 cases have become fully subsidized under the fund following the relaxation of eligibility criteria. There are also 330 cases where a patient's drug co-payment amount has been reduced. This includes a case where the patient's annual drug co-payment amount has plunged from around $52,600 last year to around $9,800 this year, showing that we have helped strengthen protection for the serious and critical among the poor acute serious critical patients. Mr. Holden CHOW. Thank you, President. Of course, I understand the intention of the fees and charges reform. I also understand why the Secretary may be worried that the amount may surge. At present, 130,000 people aged 65 have access to the medical fee waivers. Well, I can see the figure mentioned in the reply, from 450,000 to 130,000. Then we have the figure of 300,000. Just assume each elderly person will have 3,000 exemption that will run into an amount of $900 million. Which is not a large proportion of the cost, but then we can show our care for this group of patients, that is for those aged 65 or above. Can we streamline the application procedures for automatic medical fee waivers? After all, they need to go through the procedures. Can the administration consider this? Thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for his further question. As I already emphasized in the main reply, the OALA and the medical fee waiver mechanisms are fundamentally different. The latter is a medical safety net. We take into account the overall income and asset levels of the family. Just now, Mr. Chow referred to the figure of $900 million and $100 billion. I don't agree that it is actually a small number. If we have an additional $900 million, then we can definitely help more poor, acute, serious, and critical patients. We hope to help even more people with self-financed medical devices and drugs. This is especially the case when medical advancements develop by leaps and bounds. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, President. First of all, on behalf of poor, acute, serious, and critical patients, I need to thank the administration. However, the main gist of the question is about those aged between 65 and 74. I think the argument of Mr. Chow is ill-founded. That is because as long as elderly people aged between 65 and 74 are going to make an application, and then the application will be approved. Given this assumption, the HA will save a batch of manpower. They do not need to approve clerical procedures. They don't need any account of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Alipay, and so on. They don't need to print any documents as a result. In the main reply, it is mentioned that 130,000 people aged 65 and 74 have been approved. I'd like to ask whether all of these people are OALA recipients. Can we have the answer from the Secretary? Thank you. Well, 70,000 out of a total of 130,000 people are receiving OALA, not all of them. Just now you referred to automatic medical fee waivers. In our existing mechanism, the application procedures for the medical fee waiver are different from those of the OALA. This is why we need a separate mechanism to consider the income and asset levels of the applicants. Mr. Chen Hock-Fong. Thank you, President. In the meeting of the panel on health services, I once asked the Secretary about whether there is any impact on the fees charged by private doctors. The Secretary said that there wasn't any figure, but then I found that on average, some private doctors have increased the fees by about $100. So I'd like to know whether the Secretary will conduct a holistic assessment of the fees and charges reform on the part of the public healthcare system. We need to conduct an assessment before we continue with the next step. Secretary, thank you. Well, I would like to have further information about the figure you just now mentioned, such as the sampling, methodology. How did you arrive at the figure? We need evidence. We need figures, but so far we haven't received any such figures. All along, in the private healthcare market, the fees and charges are decided by the private market. There is autonomy in this regard. Overall, we do have some statistics when it comes to public healthcare expenditure, but it's not just about individual clinics. We have some statistics on the fees and charges of public and private healthcare. Professor Chen Wen-Kong. Thank you, President. I understand the fees and charges reform for public healthcare is aimed at safeguarding the security and quality of the public healthcare sector. It also aims to help citizens who have financial difficulty. However, since the launch of the reform, there are citizens in the sandwich class, including the chronically ill, who said that owing to the increased medical fees, they have even more significant burden on them. Every year, they have they need to spend an additional $6,250 on it. I'd like to know what measures are in place to help members of the public to seek treatment so that there will not be any delayed treatment or skipped treatment. Secretary, well, at present in Hong Kong, members of the public only need to share a very low proportion of the cost. As I mentioned in the main reply, the government maintains a very high level of subsidization of about 95%. In other words, members of the public only need to shoulder 5% of the cost. In the reform, we have enhanced protection. In the past, only 300,000 people were eligible, but at present, about 1.4 million people are eligible. They used to have to pay $120 for inpatient services. However, right now, they no longer have to pay. In other words, some more sandwich class families are protected. There is also the annual cap of $10,000, which offers an additional layer of protection. Medical fees and the self-financed drug devices also helped members of the public, especially the middle class. I'd like to cite a case of a patient. Last year, this patient with a kidney disease needed to pay $14,000, but this year, that patient is glad to learn that he or she only needs to pay $10,000. In other words, that patient could save $4,000. Mr. Rebecca Chen, thank you, President. We do need to carry out a medical reform, given the fact that we are facing the issue of aging population. However, there hasn't been any consultation at all, not just in the community, but also in the Legislative Council. There hasn't been any consultation. It is not like the case as you mentioned in your main reply. That is, the application procedures are not cumbersome. In fact, they are complicated. The practices vary from one clinic to another. That is the same for hospitals. You only asked members to explain to the public, but there isn't any administrative support for the arrangements for private data. There isn't even any arrangements for photocopying, so I'd like to know how many additional officers or how much additional manpower have you deployed to be responsible for making arrangements. Thank you, Ms. Rebecca Chen, for her question. With reforms, we need resolve. We need courage. We have already taken into account a basket of factors. Reforms need to be targeted, otherwise they wouldn't be effective. In the A&E departments in Hong Kong, we have already seen effectiveness in the categories. In Category 1 and 2 patients, there wasn't any reduction. Comparing with Categories 4 and 5 patients, the reduction is obvious. Without doubt, when it comes to application procedures, we need to take into account assets and income levels. But let's take a look at the figures. If within 2 months, 200,000 people have made an application, this is actually a clear sign telling us for lower income families, their income and asset levels or structures are simpler, hence the faster approval time. For some clusters, 80% or even 90% of the patients could have their applications approved. Ms. Rebecca Chen, you would like to ask about manpower, is that correct? Right, manpower. Secretary, could you provide information in this regard? Starting from last November, the Hospital Authority set up a dedicated team on medical fees and reforms. About 180 people are responsible for this arrangement, and the number of people will be adjusted as the number of applicants change. On average, 5,900. That is the peak. But recently it has dropped to 3,400. So as we can see, the vast majority of people who need to apply have already made an application. Thank you. Mr. Yu Ming. Thank you, President. Regarding public health care fees and charges reform, many members of the public think that the fees and structures are complicated. They need to fill out documents of 10 pages. That's why I agree with extending the scope of beneficiaries. Apart from OLA recipients, I'd like to express my care for carers, as they need to take care of SEN students, and there are also elderly caring for the elderly. Given the complexity of application procedures, would the administration consider providing automatic exemptions for this category of people? Secretary. All medical benefits have their respective targets, hence the different eligibility criteria and standards. Our medical fees and charges reform target the poor in the community. For example, for the poor, they may not be able to pay the medical fees owing to their financial conditions. That's why a means test is definitely necessary. As for carers, we have different kinds of support. That's why we do not consider providing automatic exemption in this regard.
Question for Mr. Chris IP. President, it has been reported that during the Lunar New Year holidays this year, quite a number of visitors camped in Hong Kong's countryside, leaving substantial amounts of litter on nearby beaches and in public toilets, and some were even suspected of illegally lighting fires. In this connection, will the government inform this council? One, as an environmental group, has estimated that more than 10,000 people visited the Sai Kung Country Park, including Ham Tin Wan and Sai Wan, via Pak Tam Chung during this year's Lunar New Year holidays, and over 1,200 tents were pitched at campsites. Whether the government has compiled statistics on the number of tents and overnight visitors at various designated government-managed campsites in the Sai Kung district between the 1st and 7th days of Lunar New Year this year, and of the highest figures recorded. 2. Of the total number of enforcement operations conducted by the AFCD at various designated campsites in the Sai Kung district during the first 7 days of Lunar New Year this year, and the respective numbers of Hong Kong residents and inbound visitors prosecuted in those operations. And 3. Given the government's previous indication that it would study the introduction of a booking or fee charging system for scenic spots in the countryside, of the preliminary details of such a system, whether prior to the implementation of any new system, special measures will be taken during festive holidays to prevent a recurrence of crowding and disorder at campsites. If so, of details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, our country has been stressing lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets and advances a visionary initiative of harmonious coexistence between humanity and nature to implement the country's principle and protect Hong Kong's irreplaceable biodiversity. The government has been attaching great importance to ecological conservation with a view to contributing to the building of a beautiful China and a beautiful Hong Kong. In December 2025, Hong Kong's Mercy Bay was selected as an outstanding example of beautiful bays with an excellent overall score, reflecting the government's efforts and achievements in protecting, planning, managing, and restoring the natural ecology. In recent years, Hong Kong's beautiful countryside has attracted many visitors. In particular, the Sai Kung East Country Park has become a favorable destination. Before the start of this year's Chinese New Year Golden Week, the government had already made arrangements for designated campsites in the Sai Kung district, including erecting promotional and educational banners and signs at prominent locations, formulating management measures, as well as conducting patrol, cleaning, litter collection, and public education. Since 14th of February, the AFCD had deployed staff at hotspots, including Ham Tin Wan, Sai Wan, and Long Kei Wan, to patrol and remind campers to observe camping etiquette and code. The FEHD also assigned toilet attendants to be on duty at the Ham Tin Wan public toilet during the Golden Week on a daily basis and installed network cameras to monitor the cleanliness of the areas outside the public toilet. During the Chinese New Year Golden Week, while the number of camping tents was significantly higher than usual. The government had implemented various measures, and the overall usage, hygiene, and order of the Sai Kung district campsites were largely in line with the plan. During the period, the AFCD had released photos a number of times showing the actual conditions of the campsites after the campers had left, and there had been no severe damage to the ecological environment of Ham Tin Wan, Sai Wan, and Long Kei Wan. Regarding another hotspot, namely the East Dam, under interdepartmental collaboration, public transport services and traffic management had been enhanced. The AFCD had also published crowd information of the East Dam on the Enjoy Hiking website, arranged cleaning services, added fencing, and erected warning signs, and conducted patrols as planned. The overall situation was also largely in line with the plan, and visitor activities were generally smooth. On where camping and lighting fires are permitted, according to the Country Parks and Special Areas regulations, campers may erect tents or camps in designated areas within country parks and special areas. The relevant regulations also allow campers and visitors to light and use fires in designated campsites or designated barbecue sites. The entire beach areas of Ham Tin Wan and Long Kei Wan have been designated as campsites where visitors are permitted to light and use fires. Additionally, campers should keep the countryside clean, and the fixed penalty for littering offenses within country parks is 3,000 Hong Kong dollars. In response to the question raised by Mr. Chris IP, my reply is as follows. 1. The AFCD has established a total of 41 designated campsites in country parks across Hong Kong, of which 9 are located in the Sai Kung district, including Ham Tin Wan campsite, Sai Wan campsite, Long Kei Wan campsite, and Pak Lap campsite. For campers' reference, the AFCD classifies the campsites into large, medium, and small sizes. One that can accommodate over 50 tent spaces is a large campsite. Ham Tin Wan campsite and Sai Wan campsite are classified as large campsites, and because their areas are significantly larger than other typical large campsites, they can accommodate a much higher number of tents than others. Currently, except for the Twist campsite, which requires reservation, all other designated campsites are available for visitors on a first-come, first-served basis. Therefore, the AFCD does not keep records of the maximum number of tents or overnight visitors for these campsites, though it is roughly estimated that Ham Tin Wan campsite had around 300 tents at its peak. 2. During the Chinese New Year Golden Week holiday period from the 14th to 23rd of February, the AFCD took enforcement actions against 32 suspected offenders at popular countryside locations within Sai Kung District's country parks. Among these, 27 were non-local residents, with 16 involved in littering, 8 spitting, and 3 lighting fires outside designated campsites or designated barbecue sites. 5 were local residents, with 1 involved in littering, 1 lighting fires outside designated campsites or designated barbecue sites, and 3 illegal bicycle activities. The above violations mainly occurred along sections 1 and 2 of the McLehose Trail and the East Dam area. 3. To better manage popular hiking sites under the AFCD's purview and support the development of the tourism industry, the EEB and the AFCD are examining the feasibility of introducing a reservation and fee charging system at some popular countryside locations and campsites. The review will fully consider the conditions of different sites, ecological protection, visitor safety, access control, and various details of practical implementation, such as reservation arrangements, how to collect the fees, whether to adopt a rename reservation system, corresponding enforcement and management arrangements, necessary supporting facilities, and promotion plans. As the system differs from the current management measures applicable to most of the countryside sites managed by the department, the AFCD plans to conduct trials to test different management methods and measures prior to implementation, to gain experience and evaluate the pros and cons of different approaches and help formulate a long-term implementation plan. The AFCD will also continue to formulate management measures and make preparation for its popular countryside and camping sites during holiday periods, closely monitor the situation at popular countryside locations, and execute the plan of conducting various cleaning and management works, patrols, and enforcement, as well as wider publicity and education on countryside etiquette. The department will also collaborate with other departments and organizations to promote different attractions across Hong Kong to divert visitor flow. Mr. Chris IP. President, for campsites there are designated periods each year where we will have a higher flow of people. I do understand the campsites are large, so it can be hard to take enforcement action or manage this side, which is why I think there should be an effective reservation system. This can really ensure we are truly a hospitable city, and we can really strike a balance between that and ecological conservation. The Secretary's reply said we will have some pilot points for such regulation work, but when visitors go to the campsites, they probably won't know the campsite requires reservation and some other campsites don't require reservation, and this will practically extend Cycle's problem to the rest of Hong Kong. Since we already have such arrangements at the Twist campsite, why not just implement such arrangement at other campsites? And one would need registration to get in the campsite, otherwise they would be penalized. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chris IP, for your suggestion. As you heard during our main reply, what you said is in line with our thinking. We think we have beautiful scenery in Hong Kong. For visitors who come to Hong Kong, it is natural that they want to camp in Hong Kong, and we welcome them to do so. It's more about how we can protect our facilities to maintain the beauty of it. We do see great opportunities to be tapped into in the tourism industry in this regard. We will consider implementing a reservation and fee charging system to achieve the intended purpose. But then if we implement this out of the blue, as we have not implemented a fee charging system before, we really need locals and visitors to adjust to this system. If we do this out of the blue, and if we block entry to those who do not have reservations, it can be quite chaotic. So we can start with some campsites and then extend the arrangements to other campsites. And as you said, this is something new. We need to really look at different ways to make things smoother before we implement it on a larger scale. We need more time for visitors to understand what we're doing, and we also need time to see what will work best for us. We also thought about when we have a reservation system and reservations are not made by visitors, what will happen? We are considering locations in the vicinity that can accommodate these visitors. But then I think we should also take a more gradual approach so that people can adjust to the fact that we will have a reservation and fee charging system. Thank you. Mr. Chan Pak-chi, we have before local startups having automated drone AI monitoring systems that can identify the flow of people, positions of hill fires, and potentially hikers, and demonstrations have been done. Does the Secretary have any plans to make use of drone AI technologies for the daily management of campsites, for example, detecting the usage rate of campsites and calculating the number of tents to identify potential overcapacity? Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your questions and comments. And in fact, I invited the AFCD on many occasions to make use of technology to manage our country parks and the flow of people. And they have at 11 locations making use of technology to monitor the situation of hill fires. And in the previous Chinese New Year Golden Week, we have invited the AFCD and the EPD to make use of drones for some surveys. So we have now accumulated more experience in making use of drones to monitor the flow of people at the East Dam and their activities. We are especially concerned for Provident viewing platform, whether some will have climbed over the platform. we found that making use of drones for surveillance worked well for us to monitor visitor activities, where they would have activities, and where we should deploy more officers. We believe the drones provide great information for us to assist in our work, and we are now exploring more applications of drones for crowd and venue management. We believe in future we will do even better in management with such technology. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Lau. Thank you, President. Right now, we have rural campsites mainly managed by the AFCD. As we see more people visiting campsites, we are likely to have insufficient manpower of the department, and we cannot have many officers deployed during nighttime to campsites. So we cannot really stop fires from being lighted. Introducing technology is one way, but can the Bureau have some sort of pilot arrangements to have some tourism organizations or venue management operators operate campsites, essentially introducing market forces to improve the management of campsites in a systematic manner? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenneth Lau, for your question. This is the direction we can take, and we are exploring this. As I said in my main reply, I briefly touch on this. We want to introduce a reservation and fee charging system to align with the development of the tourism industry. And there are two areas in this regard. One, if we have visitor groups, if we have the group operators managing the group, it would work better. We also are looking at some organizations and enterprises on the market that will be interested in managing the campsites. But of course, they have to be interested in the first place. Manpower is indeed an issue, but then we have observed this issue is mainly takes place when we have peak periods during holidays, not general weekdays. And we think with this, we should hire more temporary personnel instead of hiring more civil servants. And we have been able to deal with daily management in the short term with this approach. In future, we can think about whether we can introduce more market forces to help with management of venues and visitors. Thank you, Mr. Yupat Lang. Thank you, President. The Secretary talked about earlier how we can pilot some arrangements at some popular campsite locations. As we know, the popular locations are Long Keng Wan, Sai Wan, and Ham Tin Wan. They are common in a way because they have beaches and people camp on beaches. And we have other campsites that do not have that. If you implement such arrangements at all campsites, you will need much manpower in, say, verifying registrations. So I want to say the three locations are actually also similar to the Pui O Beach, and we have some who are camping on beaches, but the beach is managed by the LCSD. If we have we already have some sort of experience with this for the effective implementation of the registration system. So can we just improve the ancillary facilities, and can we, like another member said, introduce market forces to help with management? Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, member, for your question and suggestion. What you suggested is in line with the direction we're taking. We want to pilot some arrangements because we want to take a more gradual approach to really give time for visitors to adjust. We do see different ways of going about doing this. We do want to introduce market forces to have a healthy development of the industry, but then we need to really see if it is feasible, and the industry actually wants to test the waters first because they want to be sure before they're locked into a long-term contract, which is why we want to make use of the approach of piloting some arrangements. We actually asked the AFCD to refer to the experience of PUO as well as some other management models in the mainland and overseas to give visitors a better experience. If the member has other suggestions, we can really discuss them after the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Vincent Ching, I want to also follow up on the reservation system in the Twist campsite. I believe the system commenced operations in 2022, and I can see the website, the arrangements are quite comprehensive. The secretary said he had to look into the different options, but I think we can really make use of the experience at the Twist campsite, especially during holidays, and we can pilot the arrangements at other campsites with this, and we can promote to people the Twist campsite so that more visitors will go there. Thank you. Secretary, as I said in the main reply, we have been promoting other locations, hoping to divert visitor flow. But the Twist campsite is not exactly a large campsite. If we want to make this an alternative location to, say, Hampton Wen, it is not exactly a good comparison, which is why we want to pilot the arrangements at other locations to really accumulate experience for application in Hampton Wen and other locations. We are working with the AFCD to flesh out the different options, and we want to pilot relevant arrangements as soon as possible. We have to implement these before the National Day Golden Week, and we'll see what we can do in the next few months. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, President. I would like to thank Mr. Chris IP for asking this question today. I have all along been paying close attention to the situation at country parks. We have different factors at play here, promotion, capacity, and otherwise. And we have seen the LegCo working with the ASCD. We have observed in the past there is some mismatch in promotion and policies. Some visitors think there is a rubbish bin there. They will not take away trash. Their habits are not really aligned with those proposed by the government. So in the management model, can we make use of functions of some statutory bodies such as the Country Parks Board to really see if we can identify potential issues with management? We already have touting with reservations now, actually, for example. So is it possible for the government to act quicker instead of waiting for this to be discussed at the council for various measures to be implemented? Thank you. Secretary, we do see that we need to make some changes. We will work with different stakeholders. We will listen to their feedback. We believe there are always teething issues with implementation, which is why we want to pilot the arrangements at only certain locations. Apart from working with our officers, we will also liaise with stakeholders to collect opinion. Like the member said, can perhaps make use of the Country Parks Board to see what we can work on together to make this happen.
Question 5, Mr. Kingsley Wong. Thank you, Madam President. On enhancing the mandatory Provident Fund scheme, Will the government inform this council, first, as it is learned that some shipping companies voluntarily make MPF contributions for their crew members, although these workers, including Hong Kong residents employed under the Merchant Seafarers Ordinance, are not covered by the MPF legislation? Some members of the industry have relayed that applications for the subsidy scheme for abolition of MPF offsetting arrangement by shipping companies were recently rejected, which might have prompted these companies to continue to use MPF contributions for offsetting their employee severance payment and long service payment, or even withdraw from MPF schemes. Whether the authorities will adopt measures to ensure that the abolition of the offsetting arrangement and the subsidy scheme apply to these crew members and shipping companies. Second, as it is learned that the default MPF contributions by employers, which cannot be recovered, exceed $10 million each year, whether the authorities will reconsider bringing such default contributions within the scope of the Protection on Wages of Honor Insolvency Fund to strengthen safeguards for employees' MPF benefits. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. And third, given that the minimum and maximum income levels for MPF contributions have not been raised for over a decade, and that the MPF scheme's authority has indicated that it will submit the review report and recommendations for the 2022 to 2026 cycle to the government in the middle of this year, when the government will complete its deliberation and implement such recommendations to adjust the income levels in the short term. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, having consulted the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority and the Marine Department, we'll give our consolidated reply to the member's question as follows. First, owing to the global nature of the shipping industry, the International Labour Organization and the International Maritime Organization protect the rights and welfare of seafarers through the Maritime Labour Convention of 2006, which requires a written employment agreement between a seafarer and a shipowner or a person responsible for operating the vessel. The convention is implemented in Hong Kong through the local Merchant Shipping Seafarers Ordinance and its subsidiary regulations, which are overseen by the Marine Department. As for personnel working on local vessels, such as ferries operating within Hong Kong waters, they are protected by the Employment Ordinance, just like employees in general. The government implemented the abolition of the Mandatory Provident Fund offsetting arrangement on the 1st of May 2025. Since then, employers can no longer use the accrued benefits derived from their mandatory contributions to offset an employee's severance payment or long service payment payable under the Employment Ordinance for the employment period after the abolition date. On the same day, the government also launched the 25-year subsidy scheme for abolition of MPF offsetting arrangement to provide financial assistance to the affected employers in adapting to the policy change. Under Section 4, subsection 2D of the Employment Ordinance, on the scope of the ordinance, the EO does not apply to a person who is serving under a crew agreement within the meaning of the MSSO, or to a person who is serving on board a ship which is not registered in Hong Kong. Section 2, subsection 1 of the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Ordinance also excludes such persons from its scope of application, as neither the EO nor the MPFSO applies to seafarers employed under the MSSO. The abolition of the MPF offsetting arrangement has no impact on employers or of seafarers. In other words, these employers can follow the same approach to employment benefits both before and after the abolition. For these reasons, the subsidy scheme does not apply to the agreement between these employers and their seafarers. Second, the Protection of Wages on the Insolvency Fund releases payment in the form of ex gratia payment to employees who are owed wages and major sums payable under the EO due to business closures of their insolvent employers. If an employer has deducted the wages of an employee but fails to make MPF contributions with that money, such amounts are considered as wages owed and are protected by the fund. The MPFSO establishes the MPF system to enhance retirement protection. The NPFSO sets out employers' obligations to make NPF contributions and the consequences of defaulting on the contributions. If an employer fails to make such contributions, the NPFSO has already stipulated ways to recover the outstanding contributions. The government has no plans to expand the scope of the fund to cover employers' NPF contributions. Third, the NPFSO requires the NPFA to review the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income for NPF contributions at least once in every four-year review cycle. In reviewing the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income and preparing review reports and coming up with recommendations, the NPFA will consider statutory requirements based on the prevailing employment earning statistics and other relevant factors, such as socioeconomic conditions, labor market conditions, as well as the business environment, in particular the position of small and medium enterprises, and the financial impact on employees and self-employed persons. Upon receipt of the NPFA's review report, the government will consider the report in a comprehensive and thorough manner before making a decision. Mr. Kingsley Wong, thank you. 6 years ago, the government pledged that after the eMPF platform came out, the government would stop paying the NPF contributions for low earners. And then the Labor and Welfare Bureau also told us about the actuarial work for that effort. Under that scheme, more than 600,000 low earners, casual laborers, and self-employed persons would be able to benefit, and they look forward to such a scheme. As we're drawing up our first 5-year plan for Hong Kong, and that plan should cover socio-economic development. So, will this proposal be made part of the 5-year plan, meaning the government paying the employees' NPF contributions for low earners? Secretary. I thank Mr. Wong for his supplementary question. Each policy bureau has set up a working group based on the instructions of the chief executive to prepare Hong Kong's first 5-year plan. The Labor and Welfare Bureau has a portfolio that covers labor, welfare, talent, and poverty alleviation. The work is underway. I am not in a position to disclose the details of our preparations. Mr. Kingsley Wong brought up the idea from the last term of government about paying the NPF contributions on behalf of low earners. This proposal involves complicated matters. There's a consultancy study going on, such as the long-term financial health of such an idea and also the technical feasibility of this idea. The consultancy study is going on. Once we receive the findings, we will look at the report in detail and explore the way forward. Ms. Nixie Lam. In the reply, there's mention of the consequences of outstanding NPF payments. On threads, you can see people complaining about the eMPF platform. Some struggle to make the contribution. Others complain about false reports of default contributions. Some people even get warning letters or even a fine for failure to making the contribution. How can we make sure that people do not get falsely accused of failing to make contributions? Can we stop issuing such demand notes? Secretary. The eMPF platform falls within the responsibility of the NPFA. I will pass on the message to them. The Labor and Welfare Bureau deals with 2 issues. First, canceling the offsetting arrangement. Second, adjusting the minimum and maximum income levels. As for the operational matters, the FSTB coordinates the work. We do work with the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau, so we will pass on the message to the NPFA for them to take follow-up actions. Mr. Lam Wai Kong. administrative fees are high, whereas returns are low for our MPF. So will we look into ways to lower the administrative fees, and will we find a way to offer returns above inflation, to offer long-term and reasonable returns to ensure retirement protection for wage earners? Secretary. Mr. Lam's supplementary question highlights what we do. The Labor and Welfare Bureau deals with the abolition of the offsetting arrangement. That's the first task we deal with. And second, reviewing the maximum and minimum income levels. On the operational side of things, such as administrative fees and MPF returns, those matters fall within the purview of the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau. So I will pass on the message to the FSTB. I'm here taking the question because the question from Mr. Kingsley Wong is about offsetting arrangement. Mr. Lam Chen Singh. Thank you. The second part of the reply mentions the protection of wages on insolvency fund. I get the point about the employees' contributions, but the problem here is about the employer's MPF contributions. The reply says that we will try to recover the sums under the MPFSO. We raise this question because the ordinance does not do the job. The MPF contribution makes up only 5% of someone's income. Let's say you pay $100 million per year in ex gratia payment. The amount cost involving MPF-related funds is simply $5 million. Now, the surplus under the PWIF is more than $7 billion. Why are we not giving thought to the idea of covering such outstanding contributions under the PWIF? Secretary. The Protection of Wages on Insolvency Fund plays a role when there's an insolvent employer who closes the business and workers are owed their wages. In such an emergency, the PWIF steps in. The purpose and object of the PWIF is to meet emergency needs. An employer is out of pocket. The employee may panic. The PWIF offers immediate relief in such a case. But MPF contributions are not about immediate needs. MPF contributions are meant to be funds that an employee will draw on once the employee retires at 65. The PWIF is about immediate relief. Whereas for the MPF system, it's about retirement. So these are two distinct systems. So we should make full use of the recovery system under the MPFSO when it's the contributions that are involved. Professor Alex Fan. Many members have made suggestions about retirement protection. This is more than just a single policy tool. In reviewing the contribution levels for MPF, will we also look into ways to enhance the ways when people can withdraw their MPF balances? Can we look into the feasibility of allowing people to draw on their MPF contributions to buy their homes? Secretary. There's a statutory duty for the MPFA to conduct a review of the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income every 4 years. Drawing on the MPF balance for down payment is beyond the scope. And as I said, drawing or dipping into the MPF balance is an operational measure that falls within the purview of the FSTB. I can pass on the message to the FSTB, but reviewing the maximum and minimum income levels falls under the LWB because that has to do with retirement. Dr. Webster. I'm a non-executive director with the eMPF Company Limited. The maximum income for MPF contributions has been unchanged for many years. Keeping that unchanged will hurt retirement protection, but raising that level too quickly will make life harder for businesses, especially small and medium enterprises. So how do we strike a balance between retirement protection and business needs? If we do raise the cap, can we consider a phased approach to mitigate the impact on businesses? Secretary. I want to explain a point. The NPFA has to consider multiple factors in reviewing the maximum and minimum income levels. At this point, that study is still going on. They have yet to submit their final recommendations to the government. Once the NPFA goes through all the steps required under the law, they will submit their proposal to the government and to the Labor and Welfare Bureau in particular. Once we receive the report, we will look at the report in detail. We will consider multiple factors. We have to take a holistic approach to the report. Once we receive it, we will carefully consider the justifications for the proposal. So we will look at all the factors. Mr. Jonathan Lamport. Businesses agree that given that the maximum and minimum income levels have been left unchanged for years and there's a need to adjust the levels, still, small and medium enterprises are struggling. So when we do implement enhancements to the NPF system, will we consider transitional support such as extra tax breaks instead of simply passing on all the costs to SMEs? Secretary. Two issues are at stake in Mr. Lamport's question. First, there is a statutory duty on both the employer and the employee to make NPF contributions. And there's also a statutory duty on the NPFA to review the maximum and minimum income levels. If there's a need, the government can adjust the levels. But there is a statutory duty on both the employer and the employee to make such contributions. The government will weigh all the factors with care before making a final decision. I hope we can all see the need for the government to strike a balance between these different needs. On tax breaks for SMEs, this is a separate matter. SMEs want way more things than treatment within the framework of the NPF system. Once we receive the report from the NPFA, we look at the matter within the context of the NPFSO. Tax breaks fall into something beyond the scope of the LWB. Mr. Hong came in. eMPF is a great platform. Employees will be able to access their contribution levels on the platform. It's still early days for the platform. Some contributions have yet to show up on the platform, and that's fueling tensions between employers and employees. Has the Secretary found out about the issues? And how can we ensure smoother operation of this platform? Thank you. The eMPF platform falls within the purview of another bureau, which is the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau. The body that actually implements this platform is the Mandatory Provident Fund Scheme Authority. So that's in the matter beyond the scope of our bureau, but we will pass on the message to the relevant parties. I remind members that supplementary questions should be focused on the area covered by the question for the Secretary to give a reply.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Ms. Elizabeth QUAT. The recommendations for formulating the 15th Five-Year Plan explicitly supports Hong Kong's development into an international innovation and technology center. In recent years, the government has rigorously promoted the Artificial Intelligence Plus strategy to achieve industries for all and AI for industries, and has proposed AI training for all. However, there are views pointing out that the current AI applications in Hong Kong still face issues such as inadequate regulation as well as security and ethical concerns. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it will promote the popularization of international standards for AI management and related monitoring platforms such as ISO IEC 42001 standard certification to ensure that AI applications comply with international standards and safety norms, thereby reducing technical and security risks. 2, regarding the controversies caused by AI-generated content such as issues of deepfake pornography and disinformation, whether the government will draw on the experiences of places such as the mainland and South Korea and study the enactment of dedicated legislation targeting all AI-generated content and strengthen the regulation of online platforms. For example, by requiring clear labeling of all AI-generated content, if so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. And 3, as it is learned that the quality of some AI education courses varies, what measures the government has put in place to strengthen regulation so as to enhance public awareness of AI ethical issues through such courses and prevent the abuse of AI while promoting its widespread application. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, the government is accelerating the industrialization of artificial intelligence and promoting the deep integration of AI with various industries, while encouraging AI's wide application to enable adoption and utilization by all. Throughout this process, the government advocates AI technological innovation and safe applications to foster a healthy and orderly ecosystem for AI development. The National 15th Five-Year Plan also proposes that when deepening and expanding the AI Plus initiative, we should ensure a coordinated and fine balance between promoting development and regulated use, thereby creating a beneficial, safe, and fair environment for smart development. Regarding questions from Ms. Elizabeth QUAT, upon consulting the Department of Justice and the Education Bureau, our reply is as follows. First, AI governance is the cornerstone of ensuring the safe, ethical, and responsible use of AI. The Digital Policy Office has published and continuously updates documents such as the Ethical Artificial Intelligence Framework and the Hong Kong Generative AI Technical and Applications Guideline, providing the AI governance framework tailored to the Hong Kong context for the development and application of AI technologies, covering key principles and safety standards for identifying and managing potential AI risks. As a public institution leading Hong Kong's AI research and development and accelerating AI applications, the Hong Kong Artificial Intelligence Research and Development Institute, the AIRDI, will endeavor to improve the local AI governance framework and strengthen the foundation for AI technology empowerment. The work objectives of AIRDI include 1. Establishing AI standards and promote system interoperability with reference to the National Standards Artificial Intelligence Service Capability Maturity Evaluation and the ISO 42001 AI Management System, etc. 2. Providing AI safety assessment and related consulting services, thereby enabling local AI systems and enterprises to train AI models and conduct compliance testing in a secure and standardized environment that meets international standards. And 3. Building cross-sector and inter-regional AI collaboration platforms to jointly promote the standardization and safe applications of AI with stakeholders. The government has appointed the Board of Directors of the AIRDI this month to lead the Institute in finalizing arrangements for its staffing as soon as possible. The AIRDI is expected to come into full operation in the second half of this year to implement the aforementioned work on promoting the safe and ethical use of AI. 2. Under existing legislation, the release of indecent photos or personal privacy is regulated by the relevant existing ordinances, regardless of whether AI was used in the creation. Regarding the use of AI to produce pornographic, obscene, or indecent images, the Subcommittee on Cybercrime under the Law Reform Commission is studying the existing laws from the angle of cyber-enabled crimes and will conduct a public consultation in due course. To review whether the laws under different policy areas can keep up with pace with technological developments, including AI, the Secretary for Justice has convened a steering committee meeting on the establishment of the Interdepartmental Working Group to review legislation to support wider application of AI. The working group, in short, underscoring the government's candid and proactive approach to addressing the potential risks, including issues such as deepfake pornography and AI-generated false information, and regulatory requirements including AI governance and other related aspects that may arise from the development and application of AI, while striking a balance between promoting relevant development and mitigating associated risks. The establishment of the working group would be essential in addressing the issues arising from the fast development and pervasive use of AI, and its core members will be drawn from various policy bureaus and departments. Bureaus and departments will first conduct a comprehensive and thorough review of existing laws to identify loopholes and deficiencies, and then formulate targeted and practicable solutions taking into account Hong Kong's actual environment. The working group is gearing up for the work, and there is yet a decision on whether individual issues should be addressed through legislation. 3. In respect of educational courses, the Education Bureau has been in close communication with universities funded by the University Grants Committee, UGC, encouraging them to further strengthen their measures in AI and cyber technology applications. In 2023, the UGC allocated $100 million to establish the Fund for Innovation, Technology and Education, which aims to encourage universities to leverage technology to advance teaching, innovation, and enrich learning experience, fostering a new generation of well-rounded talents for the digital economy. Amongst the funding scope of the fund is promoting technological social responsibilities and academic integrity, which includes legal and ethical topics such as academic integrity and data privacy and security. On the other hand, to promote AI for all, the 2026-27 budget proposes organizing AI-related courses and activities to enhance understanding of and proficiency with AI among students, young people, and the public, as well as their responsible use of AI. We are making preparation for these initiatives, and through collaborating with public organizations familiar with AI alongside businesses and tertiary institutions, we aim to implement the related initiative in the second half of this year. Thank you, President. Also submit. Ms. Elizabeth QUAT. President, we have been talking about open claw very recently in the community, and there is courses that help people install OpenClaw. However, the sector identified 258 loopholes in this application, which will result in the leakage of user information or banking data. However, the government has not prohibited the installation of such application. There will be more and more AI application platforms emerging, and it's impossible for us to prohibit the installation of all of such platforms. So I wonder if how the government will enhance awareness among the general public so that they can grasp the opportunities presented by the emergence of artificial intelligence. Secretary, thank you. The government is concerned about the trend and development of artificial intelligence along with the associated risks that may arise from its development. The member just talked about OpenClaw artificial intelligence. As they offer AI-assistive applications, the rights granted by the general public to the application may be too high, and as a result, there could be a leakage of information. We have taken action immediately. We have reminded the government departments that they should not install OpenClaw applications at their computers that is connected to the SAR government. And we do have a comprehensive IT policies and guidelines for departments' reference. And we also recommend organizations to take safety measures when they install such applications, they have to put in place segregation of their systems. And I think that we have to embrace the trend of artificial intelligence, and AI will promote renovation of technology and industrial revolution. As we enjoy the benefits of technological development, we need to enhance people's awareness so that they can make good use of any new technology. We're not going to put in place a ban across the board. The Digital Policy Office have developed the Ethical Artificial Intelligence Framework and will also have a Hong Kong Generative AI Technical and Applications Guideline. We also have a thematic website teaching the public how to make good use of AI tools. Next month, we are going to organize a global international, world WIPO as Asia Summit. The HKIRC will, in the middle of this year, promote or roll out a plan on safe use of AI at workplace, so that we can help small and medium enterprises to use AI more safely. We will give them a list of assessment. As I mentioned, we're going to leverage on the AI RDI. They will offer compliance testing in a secure and standardized environment that meets international standards for the general public, and they will offer AI safety assessment and related consulting services. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Falk. Last week, some practitioners from the entertainment sector came to me. They are worried because they found that their face and voice been used to generate AI content. Their face and their voice were being used to generate videos, and we don't have any legislation on the rights of a person's face. We can only leverage on privacy-related ordinance to take enforcement action. We don't have any dedicated legislation on the use of AI. So I wonder if the government will develop a dedicated legislation on portrait right, and will we be able to use any platform to detect if any content is generated by AI so that we can take action? Secretary, thank you. The government attaches a lot of importance to the framework on AI development, and in this regard, the Intellectual Property Department is working on how we can improve the copyright ordinance and to protect the AI development. We are engaging the public for a consultation, and I know that they are working with the sector in drafting some code of practice. We have drawn on the experience from other jurisdictions, and we're going to consult the trade on the relevant code of practice very soon. Currently, anyone without a consent of the copyright owner, if they publish any copyrighted materials, even after editing, they would have violated the laws, and we do have legislation to protect copyright owners in this case. We see some progress on the market. Some AI developers have been signing agreement with copyright owners, and there is also different types of technology such as digital watermarks and reverse searching tools. if there is any complaint, it can be filed with the platform, and sometimes the manager of the platform will remove the relevant content. The government will keep in view the latest development and will keep in close liaison with the sectors so that we can help them leverage on the tools and policies that we have. Professor Priscilla Lang. President, artificial intelligence must coexist with human civilization. The Secretary's answer is rather technical. I think that AI should make people happier. We should not turn human beings into AI beings. Human beings should not become an asset of AI. Should we learn from OECD? They just published a governance framework. We should set clearer policies and legislation on our ethics and the concept of the rule of law and patriotism. Secretary. We want to use technology to enhance people's sense of happiness. The Digital Policy Office have developed the Ethical Artificial Intelligence Framework and the Hong Kong Generative AI Technical and Applications Guideline. Before we published these guidelines, we have made reference to our country's standards and latest development. We update these documents from time to time so that it can be more tailored to Hong Kong context while we help the relevant industries in their development. Apart from the guidelines and framework, the AIRDI will continue to assist the government in coming up with a better mode of applications of AI. Thank you. Mr. Ray Wong. Thank you, President. I'd like to talk about OpenClaw. This has showcased the potential of artificial intelligence. I think that we are on to a good start. We need to help traditional industries transform. If we want to implement new quality productive forces, the government must adopt data applications and compliance. I think that we need to have a database and we need to open it up for boundary logistics companies so that these companies can have access to real-time data to plan for new routes and explore new market. Regarding applications such as OpenClaw, we can use visual data to enhance automation of warehousing and storage. And I think that we should fund the sector to introduce such a technology. Lastly, to alleviate the concern on privacy and fees, the government must establish a set of market rules on the use of AI services. Secretary. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Wong for the question. I think the member is concerned how we can better leverage policies on open data so that the sector can make use of AI tools to have access to more reliable data sources. Open data policy is one of our most important principles. We do have many different platforms offering some 5,700 data sets for the public free of charge. The member talked about API. We already have some 2,500 API for the public. We do have a big data analytics platform and the consented data interchange platform to open up our data. And we also have a departmental data registry to encourage the government departments to publish their data for the public. Mr. Andrew Yao. Thank you, President. I'm glad to see that we are training the people for AI, and we have more STEAM courses in tertiary institutions. In the Lingnan universities that I serve in 2024-25, they have already mandated university year one students to take AI-related courses. We want to focus on critical thinking and ethical education. And I wonder if the administration will mandate the inclusion of AI ethics in the AI courses in universities to enhance students' AI literacy. And I wonder what measures the government have to attract the relevant tutors. Secretary. Thank you. The member just asked about AI ethics. As we promote the development of AI, we need to teach our students the right values. So it's important for us to have a good framework. I'm glad to hear that the university the members serve have been providing such a course and have been incorporating such an element in the programs. We have been in close communication with the tertiary institutions. As we nurture INT talents, we are stepping up education on ethics and morals. As mentioned, we have established the Fund for Innovation Technology in Education on academic integrity and data privacy and security. I've talked to organizations that train teachers. Many education institutions and the Hong Kong Education University have incorporated such programs in their curriculum, and is one of the mandatory courses for pre-service, primary and secondary school teachers. And we will step up our efforts in this area at the tertiary level.
That's the end of questions, government bills. First reading. Inland